Hey, in my previous video, I went over some of the main projects that I created while doing a game development degree, but I didn't show all of the projects that I worked on. If you haven't watched that video yet, I'll leave a link to it below. So I received a few comments on that video asking to see other projects that I made, and I've finally gotten around to showing them, so let's jump right in. I'll set the scene. It's March of 2021 and I'm in my final year of uni, and I have enough credit points for 2 extra subjects of my choice. Now, every semester in my degree, there were these showcases that were run to highlight the best projects that were created during the semester in different subjects. 2 of these subjects were 3D computer animation and interactive media. For the first semester of 2021, I took the 3D computer animation subject. The idea of this subject was to teach the fundamentals of animation through camera sequences, particle systems, 3D modeling, inverse kinematics and rendering, with a few others, ultimately to create a short film inside of Unity, with the film being anything that we could come up with and storyboard appropriately. The inspiration of my project came from real-life events, where I read on the news that NASA's Perseverance rover was landing on Mars about a month prior to me taking this subject. So I wanted to do a story that would match this concept and sort of explore a simulation on the rover of Mars, but obviously in a more Disney-fied way with over-the-top animations and movement. During the initial storyboarding of this project, we actually compared the rover's movements to that of Wall-E's and Doug from Up. For this project, I sort of took on a managerial role and directed the other 3 members on their tasks. The first thing I did was create the space scene where I included a simulated movement of all the planets to some kind of a scale, rotating around an axis. I was also responsible for setting up the lighting and post-processing of the various terrains that the other members of the group would use for their scenes, and I also handled the rigging of the 3D models of the rovers through Blender and Unity to simulate a sort of realistic movement of the vehicles on the terrain. So to keep the story interesting and not just have rovers moving around Mars aimlessly, we created a storyline to it, which was this. The Opportunity rover landed on Mars in 2004, and for 14 years was active before finally shutting down in 2018 due to technical difficulties. A few years later in 2021, the Perseverance rover was sent on a mission to Mars, exploring the surface and new unfamiliar terrains in a bid to rescue the powered-down Opportunity rover, where with new technological advancements, NASA's Mission Control Room would be able to use Perseverance to power back up Opportunity, where they would eventually continue their adventures through Mars together. So, if you remember from my previous video, I talked about a project that I worked on called Thorm. Thorm is a 2D roguelike dungeon crawler that a group I was a part of created for our first capstone project. Well, one of the original ideas we had for this game was to have procedurally generated dungeons. However, due to time and technical constraints, in other words, I was too to figure out how to do it, wasn't something we were able to implement during this project. But it was something I wanted to be able to create at some point. Now, in the second semester of 2021, during my second capstone project, we had a simultaneous solo assignment where we had to create a tutorial on an advanced technique inside of Unity, and I thought of this as the perfect time to try out procedural generation. After trying my own algorithms, I started looking up how other games of this genre created them, and I landed on a random walker algorithm. Essentially, the way this algorithm works is it picks a starting point, and these objects move around as if they were walking one block at a time. And with every movement, a few things would occur, such as placing a new tile down in its current location, or a chance to be destroyed, a chance to duplicate, or a chance to change directions. So after a few weeks of tinkering with the algorithm and getting it to my liking, I managed to put it together in a way that satisfied what I was trying to do. Now, this is actually a project that, since working on it at university, I have taken my own time to work on, redevelop, and to polish, in hopes that I can release this as a free tool for other developers and game designers to use in their own projects or to base their designs off of. Early into the spring semester of 2021, a society at my university which specializes in aspiring game developers, designers, and artists, named the Playmakers Society, held a 48-hour game jam, with the main theme being adaptive, which had to be included in the game, and the choice of 3 sub-themes: change of perspective, insurmountable, and last resort, with at least one of the 3 sub-themes required into the game as well. Now, going into this game jam, I had extremely little expectations, as we were really underprepared for it and had no idea what we wanted to do or how we could incorporate any of the themes into a game. Well, one of our team members was working on his own prototype for a block generator, and we used his concept as the sort of foundation to what would later become our game.
The concept sort of grew from there, and we had an idea for a hole-in-the-wall type game, where you would need to match the blocks on the screen with the blocks that were coming at you, so that you would always fill the grid, which also matched the adaptive theme. So on the second and final day of this game jam, we were thinking of ways to include one of the themes into it. The easiest idea that came to us that made the most sense was to just flip the roles around and have the player become the moving blocks, and have to remove pieces that were shown on the board instead. This fit with the change of perspective theme, and we quickly committed to this idea. My role for this project was mainly the logic behind the block generation and player interaction. But I will say for this jam, I worked in a group of 6. Don't be like us. So the game ended up being Hole in the Wall meets Tetris meets Temple Run. An endless runner where you have to adapt pieces depending on the perspective of the game to fit the grid. This was my first attempt at a game jam, and it was an extremely challenging project technically, but more so than anything, mentally. By the end of the development, my brain was so fried from non-stop programming that I couldn't comprehend what I was even writing anymore. But it was very satisfying to see something come together somewhat polished and so quickly from where it started. And honestly, for any level of game developers, game jams are an awesome way to test your skill and push your own boundaries of knowledge and design. So, the final project that I worked on in university was in spring of 2021 as well, in a subject called Interactive Media. Interactive media is a subject aimed to use creative tools and techniques to design and develop interactive media systems which can incorporate audio, images, animation, and video. There was a large focus on the creation of systems which provide user experiences in practical, real-world contexts. The subject is taught in processing using Java and JavaScript libraries. Each week in the subject would be a different lab task which we would be required to work on, which would help develop different skills which we would then build on for the final assignment. So it can start really simple, with the first lab being to create a cat, which is just to gain an understanding of processing syntax and how the different design setups work. Then it moves on to things like creating screensavers, understanding the different libraries, camera and audio input and manipulation, and even accessing data through various means to create meaningful visualizations of the data. The final assignment of this subject was to utilize data in a way that was creative and engaging to the audience. And being from a games degree, I wanted to do something games related. But due to specific limitations of this assignment, I was told I couldn't make a game. So after thinking on it for a while, a thought that I had was that something I enjoyed when I was growing up were interactive books. Things like Ripley's Believe It or Not, or the Guinness World Record books, or even just fun puzzle books. And I wanted to create something that would be like that. So I came up with the Data Visualization Handbook. A handbook that would allow the user to interact with various aspects of it however they felt like. With it, I included 6 different options. The Audio Visualizer. This would play sounds for different instruments where the user can control the volume of each instrument, and in turn would alter the sizes of the instruments displayed. Camera Visualizer. This would take in the user's webcam, if they had one, and apply filters to the camera in a fun way. So simple ones which would alter colors, and others that would pixelate the camera. Image Manipulation. Using 6 reference photos, this would use a random Walker algorithm to generate an image procedurally by coordinate and pixel reference. Drawing Tool. Inspired by something like Microsoft Paint, this allows the user to draw on the canvas using the different tools and colors. Optical Illusions. This was probably the biggest influence by Ripley's Believe It or Not, where I had a series of pages and captions that went with the images, which were all optical illusions created using different shapes as part of Processing's library. And the final part, Data Visualization. I had access to a data feed from one of the buildings at my university, which tracked the number of people who entered the building on different days. This building is also nicknamed the Cheese Grater because of its design on the outside, closely resembling a cheese grater. So I thought it would be fun to have the outline of the building on the page and have the grater design be procedurally generated by using the data that the user selects. So essentially the grater, or each dot, represents a person going into the building on a specific day of the week. So there we have it. I have finally gone over all of the major projects I worked on at uni. So if you stuck around and watched both parts of this video, let me know in the comments which was your favorite project. Otherwise, as always, the support you guys have shown the channel has been nothing short of amazing, and I can't thank you enough. I'm currently working on some more videos that I'll be able to put out over the next few weeks, so if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel to keep up to date with the latest content. I also have a Discord group set up, which I'm extremely active on, along with a bunch of other great people, and there you can chat with me directly, get the latest updates on videos, vote on different thumbnails for future videos, and you'll also have access to the latest game development progress for my upcoming game, Dawn. So if you haven't joined already, the link will be in the bio of this video. Otherwise, thank you all for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.